If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. Thank you.
It's your time for Chai with Nanice. Get ready for substance, clarity, change, and especially empowerment. Get ready to turn over stones, uncover stories, and get to the heart of the matter in every area of your life. Any mood runs, any emotion flies, and your dreams are within your grasp. There are no limits or boundaries, and your comfort zone is out of reach, yet it's the safest place you will ever be. Come in, sit down, and have some chai with Nanice.
Welcome to Chai with Nanice. I'm Nanice. Today, I'd like to take you on a little journey to begin the show. I'd like you, if you can, to close your eyes and imagine an old, abandoned, and boarded-up building. The kind you try to ignore because, well, you sense an eerie negative energy. Imagine going inside this building and finding that it is completely dark, just as you suspected. Standing in the darkness, you noticed a sliver of light beaming in from the smallest of cracks. And as you watch this single beam of light gently hit a minuscule part of the wall, you begin to notice that the paint around the light is beginning to crack and fall off. Once it starts cracking, you notice that the chipping away at the old paint spreads to the entire wall and then to the whole house. Before you can blink an eye, you see that every speck of paint in the house is falling to the ground one bit at a time, yet all at the same time. Once the cracking stops and the bare walls are exposed, you almost can't believe your eyes. What just minutes ago felt dark and unapproachable is now brilliant, emanating light. The entire house is full of this piercing, bright light. You realize that just below the surface, this brilliant light existed all along without notice until now. You smile to yourself because you now understand that behind even the ugliest and most difficult of experiences, relationships, and situations, this light eternally exists, and nothing could ever diminish its magnificence. And then you get it. This light is also inside you now. It has always been there, regardless of how much you have covered it up with your fears, negative stories, harsh actions, disempowering beliefs, or even what appears to be hatred or anger. And in fact, you are this light. This light is you. With this realization, an intrinsic feeling of your true value begins to rise up inside you. And you now know that with this newfound power, you can be the person you truly desire to be, and nothing could ever stop you from being the creator of your own life. And now you get to shine your light. It's spring here in the United States, and I believe in most parts of the world. And with spring, those dark walls and that old paint begin to come down and chip away. And underneath is the promise of a new day, the promise of a new life, the promise of new possibilities. And in the light of this great transformation that we're all experiencing inside of ourselves, and not just going from winter to summer, but also going from darkness to light, I invite you to look inside yourself, to look through all the difficulties and all the challenges, to look through all the shadows that may have stopped you from seeing yourself or others, and to begin to find yourself. And if this show is about anything, and I don't mean just today, but all the shows that you listen to here on Chai with Nanice, sole purpose is truly to find your own light. And that's my greatest dream for you. Today, my guest is my dear friend, is Lawrence Touitou, and you've heard him on the show a few times before, and we've talked about many, many different things. Today, Lawrence has actually come up with some questions that he always wanted to ask me. And I don't even know what those questions are. So today's show will be as much of a surprise to me as it is to you. And to tell you a secret, that kind of excites me because I love to be surprised and I love to be on the edge of new thought and inspiration. So, welcome today to the show. Lawrence, are you there?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Nanice. It's such a pleasure to be back on the show again. And, I always love chatting with you. It's like we're, right next to each other. And even though I'm here on the West Coast and you're over in Salt Lake City.
Yes.
So very excited about the show. And I'm going to tell you something. Honestly, it could go any which way for me, too. Because
awesome.
I've thought of some things, and I've kind of did write some things down. I also like to let it happen as it does.
Awesome.
So I'm really glad to hear that your greatest wish for everybody is that they find their own light, and I think that actually was one of the things I wanted to ask you. So you've actually already answered a question.
Mm.
So I'd like to start off, you and I have talked a lot about, how you got started, how we met. I don't know if a lot of listeners remember that, we met at Burning Man, and one of the things that you really set you out on this path was just to figure out that one thing for your child, and that was how to develop self-esteem and self-confidence. Right. And from there, it just evolved. And what seemed like probably your worst nightmare evolved into your greatest gift of unfolding and going through a lot of difficult times, which enabled you to learn about life and learn about yourself. So moving forward, I'd like to kind of, now that you have all this hindsight and wisdom and all these things, I'd like to just know from your experience working with all your clients and in your Echo coaching school and so forth, if you could tell me maybe the three most common things, most common mistakes, if you will, or the most common misconceptions that you run into that people may have. Like, what are the most common everyday things that you see people, if you could put it this way, doing wrong, and how, what are those three things?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Well, I don't think that there are any mistakes, and I don't think there's such a thing as doing wrong, but I imagine that you would guess that I would say that.
Well, I always, kind of put it in the context of, something solid. Like, I wanted to just kind of write it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I am a marketer. So it's kind of like, what are the three things that people are doing wrong and can quickly do it right? But that's, I'm around my words. I'm not on my words. So don't hold on. It's just the idea. What are the most common mistakes or misconceptions or things that people are doing?
Yeah, it's a great question because I work with people from all around the world, and really when you really get to know someone, when you really are speaking with someone in an intimate conversation, which is what happens when I coach somebody, you get to know who they are, and you get to know, what makes them tick, and you get to know, where those sticking points are. And truly, it comes down to the same things over and over again, the same things. And number one, I would say, is absolutely self-worth. It's self-worth, that people don't know their worth. And when you don't know your worth, then you give it away. Right. You give it away, and you don't value yourself. And so
they've forgotten, maybe. I've heard it said that we've forgotten our power, we've forgotten who we are, we've forgotten our connection to Source. Is that related to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because you can't really know your worth unless you know your relationship to Source. It's one and the same. Now, and this is and we've talked about worth on one of the shows, and this is definitely important to go back to because it comes up over and over again. And even having the conversation many times, it often doesn't permeate where it needs to permeate to people who really will be most affected by this conversation. And so, if our worth is dependent on anything, then it's really not worth. That true self-worth is independent of anything and anyone, and there's no conditions on it. So it's like if you feel good about yourself, if you've got a good paying job and you've got a nice car, or you're good family, or whatever your conditions are, I feel great, I have high self-esteem. But as soon as one of those things is threatened or goes away and you don't have high self-esteem, I mean, as soon as it goes away and suddenly you don't feel good about yourself and your self-esteem goes away as well, then that's not really self-worth. So self-worth is really independent on what happens. So when people put a condition...
I just wanted to say, that's awesome that you said that. I did something in Facebook the other day that said, I plus this other thing equals I'm okay.
Yes.
So as long as this other thing's over there, then I associate my self-worth with having this degree, with having this job, with having this wife, with having this whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people have lists, and the lists are often similar to most people in the world, and with certain exceptions depending on cultures and locations and all that. But yes, but as long as our
once this other thing moves out of the way, we see the truth.
Yes, and so if we end up in this place, well, I don't feel good about myself, then we really don't know true intrinsic self-worth. Self-worth depends on nothing and no one. And from this place, everything becomes possible. As long as you have a condition on how you feel about yourself or how you feel about your life, you're always going to be running. You're always going to feel like you have to keep up with something. And I do this exercise that's really, really powerful, and I've had my students do it in the Echo Coaching School, and that is dropping into this unworthiness, this place of unworthiness. And what that looks like is when somebody reaches this place of fear, like I'm really afraid that this is going to happen, I play this little game with them, and it's kind of, well, then what's going to happen? And then what's going to happen? And then what's going to happen? And, we go through these layers, and we often end up at this place, well, I feel like I'm going to disappear, I won't exist anymore. And that's the edge. That's what I call the edge of the ego, and that's the most fearful place. And most people stop there and won't go any further. But with guidance, they feel safe to go deeper. And I always promise whomever I'm working with, don't worry, I won't leave you in a dark place. And by dropping into disappearing or not existing, what they find is peace. And very often the first thing I hear someone say when they really drop into that place is like, it's okay, or I'm okay, or I'm fine, it's fine. And they're really surprised. And the reason that people are so surprised is because this great fear keeps you from going any further. So it's like, I don't think our greatest fear is dying. I think our greatest fear is not existing, which is different than dying, because a lot of people believe, well, you die, but you still exist. Well, what happens if you don't exist? And when we go past the edge, the fear of not existing, and we drop into the nothingness, that's when we really find ourselves. And when we return from that to our lives, what happens is suddenly we realize that we don't need to do anything in order to have self-worth, that it's guaranteed, whether we, wrote 10 best-selling novels or, we sat up on a mountaintop for the rest of our lives and did nothing. It's all the same, that our worth is invaluable. Our worth is immeasurable. And so...
Wouldn't you say that we can get in? Go ahead, keep going, and then I'll ask you in a minute.
Yeah, and so this is a huge piece that once someone really understands what worth is and grabs onto a true intrinsic unconditional self-worth, then anything becomes possible, because it's impossible to fail. There's no failure.
Now, we've spent a lot of time on self-worth. I think we had a whole call on self-worth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
self-worth is so big that I'm really hard pressed to see if there's anything else that really can compete with it. But is there anything else that comes to mind besides self-worth, or it might have a relationship to self-worth, but it's somewhere also along the path of finding your self-worth? Yeah. Well,
going back to your question, what are the three things, that people,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, do wrong? So, it connects with self-worth, looking outside yourself for the answers.
That's a very good one. I like that one.
Yeah, and you see this all around. It's like, and again, it relates back to self-worth, because if you think that your self-worth is dependent on anyone or anything, of course you're going to look outside yourselves.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
So,
and what's the third?
Well, expecting different results. Doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. And that could mean, like, a relationship. That would be a really good example. So you keep doing the same thing in different relationships even, but you keep ending up with the same relationship. I'm sure that a lot of people out there can identify with that. I definitely in the past could have identified with that, you end a relationship, you get into a new relationship, it's different, but you're still the same, and so the same dynamics is created in that relationship, so you keep ending up in the same thing. And the same thing with jobs. That right. I'm unhappy in this job, so I'll go to another job. But it's really the same job because you're the same.
I could totally relate. And if we look at 1, 2, and 3, self-worth, yes. Looking outside yourself and expecting different results. I just want to make a relational, see what the relationship is. I feel like it's an onion. Like how you peel an onion. Mm-hmm. Yes. And inside is that self-worth, and it's being mm-hmm. covered up by it's. People who are listening who haven't gotten down to that level might see that, well, I can totally get that I am expecting different results and I see the same patterns happening again. But, am I looking outside of myself for, am I looking outside of myself for self-esteem, for mm-hmm. appreciation? You remember we talked about that, and all yes. these other things that cover up, our self-worth. And then finally you get down to the core level of self-worth, which is like, wow, I'm at that level where, I either intrinsically believe I am powerful, I intrinsically believe that I have worth and that, I have infinite worth, in fact, and, or you're not yet at that stage. So just, that is great that, you've actually said it in that order, because one is kind of on the outer layer, you can sort of see it. One requires maybe a little more introspection. A lot of people are walking around. If you don't know that you have an inner self and an outer self, which took me many years to even realize, mm-hmm. and that the inner self is at the causal layer and the outer self is more of the effect, mm-hmm. you're just going to continue to walk around and look at all the effects that your thoughts, beliefs, and so forth are having on your outer world, not even realizing there's an inner world. And in that inner world, deep down is hidden that beautiful, vibrant, wonderful self-worth that right. We all aspire to have.
It is there for everyone, and that's the point. Whoever you
there,
are,
and it's beautiful, and it's powerful, and it's in us all. It's only a matter of us realizing it and knowing it and experiencing it. So that's awesome. Those are 3 wonderful things. And
I'd like to add one more to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
And I'm sure even after today I'll be thinking about this. Oh, I wish I would have said that.
That's why I'm so long-winded, is to give you time to think about it.
Awesome. No, you're great. You're wonderful.
Go for it.
So what I've also noticed that most people are afraid to go into what I call the void. And this is like that dark place, that, the place that they're most afraid of. And I'm talking about emotionally mostly. And because they're afraid to go to that deep place that feels bottomless, that they don't break through to the other side. And I think this is because people are afraid that if they drop into that they're not going to be able to get out. But the truth is, whatever you're looking for is on the other side of the darkness. And all the growth that you could possibly want and all the enlightenment that you could possibly want, you're not going to get there by avoiding the darkness, by avoiding those personal shadows. The only way that you really get there is by moving through it, kind of like a tunnel. They talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. I believe this is the tunnel that they are talking about, and it's the light of our own enlightenment, and the only way through is through the tunnel.
I totally get that, and I think what you're saying is, for example, if you want to go live in an ashram, mm-hmm. You think you're going to achieve spiritual enlightenment that way, but what you're kind of doing is you're taking yourself out of the process of life, which is constantly showing you exactly the things in the timing and in the right place at the right time of the things that you need to see and be participating in, and don't resist. Stay within your experience of the full experience of life, and just feel through the difficult issues and just stay with it. Is that sort of what you're saying? Not stay in the void?
Yeah, it's like we get lost and we suffer when we resist something. If we just allow ourselves to feel whatever it is that we're feeling and allow our emotions to take us deep within ourselves, we automatically move out the other side. It's when we resist or just go so far that we get stuck, in the dark tunnel. So resistance creates suffering, and suffering is resistance. It's really not the feelings or the emotions that are so bad. It's the resistance of them. And in fact, our emotions are our greatest gift to connect with ourselves and connect with the divine source of all. So, you might have heard me say this before, Lawrence, but everybody, well, I don't know about everybody, but a lot of people on the planet now know that the answer's not outside of themselves, that it's really inside themselves. So the next question should be, well, how do I get inside of myself? How do I connect with
How do I
myself?
access that? Right.
How do I access it? Exactly.
Good question.
And truly the answer is through the emotions. This is one of the gifts of the emotions, by allowing ourselves to really feel. And sometimes it feels challenging to feel that deeply because we're not used to it. We've been taught and trained not to. But by allowing the emotions to bring us into ourselves and connect to ourselves, this is how we connect with ourselves. And I discovered this years ago by surprise. Because I, like so many other people, I was brought up in Queens, New York, and, my parents weren't very connected to their emotions, and I was taught, like, so many other children and so many other people, not to feel or express your emotions, to, find ways to avoid them, and I was very good at it. Well, a few years ago, my dad was dying, and he was in the hospital for a couple of months on life support. It was pretty grueling, and my instinct was to, push my feelings away and to do all sorts of things with them, including NLP and, all that stuff. And I made a different choice, and it was a very courageous choice, and the choice that I made was to really just feel whatever I was feeling, just to feel my emotions. And they were emotions of loss and despair and grief and everything that went along with it. And it wasn't just a one-time decision. Like, I didn't just say, okay, I'm gonna feel my emotions through this process, because I knew my dad was dying. It was an everyday choice, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. But I kept making it, even though the easiest thing would have been to avoid whatever I was feeling. The easiest thing would have been to, find that happy place again, which I was so good at finding. But I decided that I was going to just feel whatever I was going to feel. And I felt a lot, and it took my dad 2 months to pass. And the biggest surprise that I got is that when he finally did pass, that deep sorrow and despair that I had been experiencing was replaced with unbelievable joy.
Wow.
Unbelievable, deep, deep, deep joy.
How old were you when your dad passed?
It was about 3.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, and that's something we have in common. I had I was 15 when my dad passed, and it was a very difficult experience, and I didn't have that foresight that you had 3 years ago, and I think that I had to work through a lot of those emotions probably in the last 3 years, and it stays with us until we do until we do allow it to surface, and we do allow ourselves to connect with our emotions. I think actually, I can honestly say, for my sake, and we'll get back to the questions in a second, but I feel like my heart in general was closed down, because when you start closing yourself down to all the different emotions around you, you basically close down your ability to feel.
Yeah.
And people like who have broken up in relationships and they're hurt and they hold, any sort of unforgiveness. I mean, they've just closed themselves down to any kind of further relationship of a similar type, until they kind of allow themselves to not resist it anymore and to connect to those same feelings again. And like you said, just allow So I just wanted to mention we have that in common, and I really, I can definitely relate. To find that happy place again is very important. I've heard it said that resistance is our way of shutting down fear. Do you agree with that?
Resistance is a way of shutting down fear. Okay, let me look at that. Well,
no.
I
Is
think
that
it gets.
Yeah, that's what's said. Resistance is our way of shutting down fear.
Yeah.
In other words, we're
I don't
scared
think
to
it
go
really.
to a place.
Say that again, Lawrence.
In other words, we're scared to go to a place like that void. We're scared to go, so we use resistance to shut that fear down or suppress it.
So the question is, does it really work? I do see how that's a strategy, that instead of feeling the fear or whatever that emotion might be, we resist it. So it's like we put up an imaginary wall or blockade.
Like, is that the mechanism that human beings, would you agree with that statement? Not that that's...
Yeah, I definitely see that. I don't think that it ever works. And in fact, it's like what they say, what we resist persists, and that is such a gift, because whatever it is that we're resisting holds huge gifts for our own transformation, our own growth, or our own evolution and enlightenment. So when we resist something, we're actually saying no to that growth and to that evolution, to that light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
The greatest gift we can give to ourselves is what we really want to resist, to not resist and go with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm stating things such that, like, for me, it's helpful to know what I'm doing wrong in order to know how to correct it. That's why, like, if I say, like, resistance is the way of shutting down fear, for me, that's very important to be aware of. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I resisting this emotion? Or why, what's behind it? Oh, gee, I'm not even aware. I had a fear about this situation, or it seems a little bit too big for me right now. I don't want to move into that space.
Yeah.
So I'm resisting it. And I think what you said, what we resist persists. Yeah, absolutely, of course, because you're creating an energy signature around your body, which is actually magnetizing, and like from the law of attraction, we're constantly using the law of attraction. So whatever we're resisting or we're holding against our own energy, we're holding it away from us, in the energy body, we're holding it away. We're actually creating a magnet which is attracting other energies which are going to replay the exact same scenarios again and again and again.
Right. So that we finally get it.
Exactly.
It's like, the FedEx man came to my door this morning and nobody was here to sign for the package. So he's going to come back tomorrow.
Right.
And he'll keep coming back until I get my package. And it's really the same thing.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
And I am so, years ago, I did not like that one bit, because I couldn't run away, and I loved to run away. I thought that was the solution. And now I get that I am so glad.
What do you mean you used to run away? You run away from home?
Well, I did run away from home when I was 16.
Right.
But I used to run away from anything that I didn't want to feel.
I got you.
Yeah.
Which is a similar scenario.
Absolutely. And those things that I was running away from always persisted. And sometimes, the next day or the next year or the next decade, but lo and behold, there was no running away. And now I look back and I am so grateful for the persistence of all those things that I resisted, because they are exactly what I needed for my own growth. And I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be talking to you now if it weren't for those things.
Absolutely.
So, what you said about what am I doing wrong? Are you in a factory today, Lawrence? I hear a lot of stuff going on.
Is that right? No.
Yeah.
My office chair is very squeaky. I'm sorry.
Oh.
and I'm flipping through paper.
I thought maybe you were like in a factory or something, right?
Yeah. No. This is my house. It's very productive. It's not a factory.
Oh, it's a squeaky house, right?
Yeah.
I know sometimes microphones, it's okay. Sometimes microphones just kind of pick up everything. So I have another microphone that I sometimes use. What's that?
I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question is, we just started
talking a little bit about what I would call the nature of life, how life is set up. It's set up in such a way that it reproduces scenarios that allow you to play out in your life the exact same scenario, which resonates with the issue that perhaps you still haven't fully embraced, and so forth. So with that said, I want to ask you, why would life be set up this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why is life in general, in a broader sense, now not talking about individuals, but why is life set up this way?
Why is life set up? Can you put that to me in one sentence so I make sure I know what you're asking me, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Why is life self-correcting?
Yeah.
Using let's say, putting in your face the exact same things, the exact same issue that you've been trying to kind of, get over, work through, and so forth. Why does it keep coming back in your face? It almost seems like it's a little unfair, don't you think?
Yeah.
So why is life?
It could seem that it could seem that way, that it's unfair. The unfair card just makes us blind to see a greater truth. What I believe is that the universe is constantly conspiring on our behalf to empower us to awaken. That everything around us, every situation, every person, everything is conspiring on our behalf to help us wake up and remember who we really are. And, if we have beliefs that are counterproductive to our true intrinsic power and self-worth, then those beliefs are going to appear in our lives. They're going to reflect what we believe about ourselves or about life until it gets so uncomfortable that we decide that this isn't working for me anymore, and I'm going to believe something else. And I'll give you an example. So, as you know, when I was 16, 17, I was in this horrifically abusive relationship, and it got so bad, so bad, and I nearly lost my life on more than one occasion. It got so bad that it forced me out. That it forced me out of the relationship. Either that or that I would die. One or the other. If it was just something that I could tolerate, I would have stayed in it. So it's like we can look at that in a lot of relationships. Many people listening, they've had or they are in relationships that they can tolerate. So you kind of go along with it. But when things get really bad and you get past that threshold of toleration, then you're ready to make a change. And so life, like the birth canal, was always pushing us out, always pushing us towards that light, always pushing us towards really ourselves, or the source. And so, of course, these things, until we resolve an issue within ourselves, which is just a false belief, until that false belief has been resolved, situations will appear over and over and over again to allow us to know what we are believing and accepting as truth. So there's nothing happening out there. There's absolutely nothing happening out in the world. Everything is really just, it's happening within us, and we're simply projecting it out into the world. So, our subconscious is really just, it's a projector, and our life is the projector screen. So when I, say, oh, something's happening out there, and I try to fix that, and this goes back to, what those three misperceptions in life, then I have no control. I have no control of changing what's going on out there. What I do have control over is changing what's going on inside of me. So if I look at my life and as feedback, then I get to change the source, the projector, that my subconscious beliefs, my subconscious truth of the world, or what I have believed to be true. And that's the power of it. So when we say, oh, life is not fair, life is always fair. Because life can never, ever give you anything other than what you're experiencing inside yourself. You probably heard me talk about the story of my mom, years ago. She was learning to use the computer, and she typed up this document, and she printed it out, and she noticed that, she had some errors, so she took a pen and some whiteout, and she corrected it with the pen and whiteout, and was happy with the corrections, went back to the computer, printed it out again, and was completely befuddled that it didn't print out with the new corrections. And this seems ridiculous, right? It seems ridiculous to you and me. Of course, she has to make the corrections in the document, in the source, in order to get the new printed copy. But to her, she didn't understand that. Well, as ridiculous as this is to us, when we really understand a higher truth and we think, oh, I'm going to change my life without changing me, that's just as ridiculous.
I like it. And, I asked you that question because, of course we share similar views. I think in the higher perspective of things that consciousness wants to know itself. Consciousness is always self-correcting, and it is inevitable. The outcome for consciousness is inevitable in the sense that we as individuals may not want to look at something now. We may not want to look at it in 10 years, 20 years, or even in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. But sooner or later, those same issues will get replayed again and replayed again and replayed again. So let me ask you, what's in that sense, I mean, would you say that the ultimate goal in life would be to reach a point where what would be the ultimate goal?
I love that question. My answer is going to be different than what you think it's going to be.
What is the goal for this?
To be present.
Is it self-realization? You can call it. What do you want to call it? I mean, is it to be totally self-realized? Is it to be to have God consciousness? Is it to be one with with the all that is?
I don't think that's the goal of life. I can see how that looks like the goal of life, but my own personal view, the goal of life is simply to be really alive, to just be really present in this moment, to be present in this body, to be present in this relationship, to be present. When we think, the goal is, I must evolve, and, I do all these spiritual things, my whole list, do this, do this, in order to evolve and become one with God. And then I'm missing this moment. And what is becoming evolved or one with God? It's being present. And so I can become evolved and one with God right now simply by being present. So instead of trying to do one thing to get another, I'm just going to do the thing that brings me the most joy and happiness, and that's being present. So I look out my window now, and I see this beautiful tree, and there's not a leaf on it. And yet I can sense it, and I can feel it, and it's getting ready for spring. And it's doing exactly what it needs to do in order to be full, in order to blossom, in order to be rich with color and fruit. And for the tree, that's presence. And for me, witnessing the tree, that's presence. Being here with you today and listening to you, and you listening to me, really listening beyond the words, that's presence. I think that's the goal of life, if there is a goal. And I also think it's impossible to do life wrong. I really do. Whatever it is, I think it's impossible to do life wrong. So, one of the things that I think it's all perfect, that it's impossible to do life wrong, that there really is no wrong. And, years ago, I've always worked on, not being judgmental. That's been like a huge thing for me. Like, I don't want to be judgmental for a good part of my life. And the universe taught me a few good lessons about that. And one of them was years ago. I do past life regressions, and I guide people through the past life regressions. I don't know if you know that. Well, many years ago, I did one of my own past life regressions, and when I did it, I discovered myself to be a really awful person. Right? Yeah, and I was a murderer. I was a man. I was a rapist. And I was a thief, and everybody hated me and feared me. And it was, and I felt what the energy was of that person. And when I came back from the regression, I realized that, that was an experience that I had too. And this is still me. I still know who I am. And And what I got was that maybe one of the reasons why I love people so much and have so much, for lack of a better way of saying it, kindness inside of me was maybe because I had that experience. Maybe because I had this experience of being this, awful person. And in that moment, I became so grateful that I had to have that experience in order to really experience love and kindness for others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong. And I'm going to give you another story. And it's about judgment too. So years ago, when I had first moved out to Utah, and I would take my kids to garage sales on Saturday morning, and they would like it, and it was fun. And one particular morning, I pulled up in front of this house, and it was actually it was a morning that I had just had an awful fight with my husband at the time. So I was a little upset and probably not thinking as clear as I could. Well, I was just going to go look at something for a second in this garage sale, and could see the car and everything, and my kids were, they were in their car seats, and what could happen. And so I got out of the car to be back in 60 seconds. Right. And as I walked to the driveway where this garage sale was, there was a man yelling at this woman. And he was just really disrespectful. And immediately in my old brain of, abuse and abuser and, all that from, having been abused and having worked in the field of domestic violence for many years after that, I thought to myself, abuser? I thought that. And, didn't think anything about it. I just made that judgment. And, I didn't judge anybody except people that I saw as abusive. Well, anyway, about a second later, a woman started screaming, "There's a car rolling down the block backwards."
Oh, shit.
Yes, yeah. And guess whose car it was? Yes, it was mine, with my two little toddlers in the car.
Oh, my God. I
started running towards the car.
Wow.
Of course, yeah. And immediately realized that car was running a lot faster than I could ever run. Well, the same man that I had just judged, seconds before as an abuser, he ran out of the house and he passed me by, and he was running down the block. Somehow he caught up with the car, got the door open, jumped in the car, pulled on the emergency brake, jumped out of the car, and ran back into the house. And I got in my car.
Oh, man.
And I was in shock. And my kids, they thought it was funny. They thought it was the funniest thing. And they were laughing. And I'm sitting there in the car now, and I'm holding the steering wheel, just sitting on the street there, and I'm literally shaking of what just happened.
I'm sure. I'm kind of shaking right now.
I know, just telling the story. Right?
Shit, I need a breath.
Yeah. But I got it. I got it. The man that I had just judged as an abuser just saved my children. And God knows who else, the car might have hit. Yeah, I got it. That was the last time I've ever judged anybody. And if I even dare to judge anybody, I immediately remember that. Who am I to know who someone is? Who am I to judge anyone? That's so wrong? I don't believe in wrong. I believe in absolutely perfect, powerful lessons.
It brings to mind a small story, if you have a minute.
Of course.
This past week, something weird happened to me that the story you just told me reminds me of. I was online with somebody that I felt was selling to me, and I was kind of sick of it. There was this big lead up to join a teleseminar one night, and I listened to the teleseminar, and it was almost like I knew it was coming. Like, can't these guys just give me, help me without selling to me? What I noticed, behind the scenes, in retrospect, was that my resistance to money, abundance, and a lot of other things. So I was kind of taken aback. I was like,
right.
Kind of offended that you want to get richer or something like that, or you want to, sell me something. So it was chat enabled. So we were able to communicate via chat, which was kind of cool. And it was like, if you have a question, just type it in. I was like, okay. They were like, okay, and it's only going to cost you 3 payments of $297. So that's like $1,000 or whatever. And, I wrote an email kind of sarcastically. I was like, how much will it cost to join the program and not have you sell to me anymore? Because I'm already on a program to be on this call. I've already paid. So it's
Right.
not like I haven't paid anything. I'm like already paying you to help me, and now you're asking me for more money to join this even bigger and better program.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when I hit that send button,
Yeah.
and I felt something in my heart. You know how you feel like this,
Yeah.
like what you said, you judge and you feel sort of a hatred or an anger towards that person.
Yeah.
But it was like, screw it. Even with my self-awareness, even with everything that's going on, okay, I'm human. I have feelings. I don't think that's right. And boom, I hit that button. I was like, I want you guys to know how I feel. I don't like that.
Right.
While this was going on, my son, 1 year old, who you might have heard even on this call because he was crying a little bit before, and he got into the recycling. And he was, while I was on the computer, he was, walking around the house with a can that had a sharp edge in the recycling. And my wife was in the back.
Yes.
He fell over the can and started crying. My kid always cries, no big deal. My wife really understands the distinction between a cry and a cry, and she came running in. And I sort of pulled myself reluctantly away from the computer nonchalantly. I'm like, it's nothing. I pick him up. He slit his lip like about a half an inch, which is a lot for a 1 year old, all the way back. And he was bleeding profusely. We were really shaken up. We took him to the emergency room. A lot of things worked in our favor. Long story short, 24 hours later, you could hardly know that anything happened. But there was something in the back of my head, and I even said it to my wife on the way to the hospital. I said, I don't know how, I don't know why, but something about what I did has somehow affected this situation. I don't know how, but like the cut on his face is related in some way to my anger that I shot out at these people. And I can't tell you exactly how. The vibrations that are created, the synchronicity between my son and I. A lot of times we wear the same things without even knowing it. He'll have his green sweatshirt, I'll have my green sweatshirt. We are really connected in such a way, and I think we're all, in some ways, our families especially, we're all connected in such ways. And
everybody is connected.
Yeah,
this is such a great question, and it deserves a whole show. Unfortunately, we only have a couple of minutes, but let me see if I can address it, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you're right. We are all connected, and not only are we connected to those people that we're related to, but we are connected to everyone in the world. And in fact, everything that we do, think, say, and feel directly affects everyone in the world. Everyone. And this is what's happening as that veil is getting thinner and thinner, and we are becoming closer to source. We're also becoming closer to each other. And so it becomes really apparent that anything that I do, think, feel, or experience or believe is going to affect not only those around me, but everybody. And everything is affecting us directly. And so I think it's interesting that your son would end up in the garbage, because that's where you ended up. You ended up in the garbage with these feelings and emotions because you took it personally. And, he cuts his lip. So, when we talk, what do we use? We use lip, the lip service. Yeah. And so, we also have contracts with each other to show each other, okay, this is what you're thinking, this is what you're feeling, this is what you're experiencing. And so maybe your son was helping to fulfill something there. And the fact that it healed so quickly also might tell us that it really wasn't his issue, because it did heal so quickly.
Well, all I could say is, he's the most dear thing in the world to me, and, it really did slap me in the face and wake me up and say, hey, take a look at this, like really loud and clear. And I'm glad I got that message. I'm glad that I wasn't at a point in my life where I think everything is coincidence, because it certainly wasn't.
Absolutely. Nothing is coincidence.
And
Lawrence, we only have about another minute. Would you care to give your website address to anybody who'd like to get in touch with you?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I am out of soullevelmarketing.com, and you can go and check out my blog over there. And I also have a link back to Nanice's website at nanice.com. But yeah, it's soul, SOUL, and then level, LEVEL, and marketing.com. And I'll be happy to have you guys join me and comment on my blog and send me letters and whatever. And we're all one big family. Yeah, we're all one big family.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. You're awesome.
Thank you so much, Nanice. Always a pleasure. And I want to wish you and your family and your listeners a wonderful spring and just like a great week.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Have a beautiful night. Thank you.
We'll see you on the next show. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Spring. Here we are, and we are approaching an amazing time, not just in the year, but in our lives. And it truly is the time that we get to wake up, and everything is conspiring on our behalf, even those challenging situations as we spoke about today. And the good news is you really can't do wrong, that life is self-correcting, and whatever path you might find yourself on, there is always directions and there is always guidance. It's all around us. There is nothing that is not telling us the truth of who we are. There's nothing that is not directing us to where we most want to be. And we absolutely, positively have the opportunity to create our most magnificent lives and live our greatest dreams. This is true for you. This is true. All you have to do is say yes and take one step at a time in the courage of your own light, in the courage of your own dreams. Please visit me on my website at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com for tons of free articles. All my shows are archived there, free book download, free song downloads, and everything that you can possibly imagine to help you on your path to creating your perfect, most perfect, amazing life. I will see you next week on Chai with Nanice. Have a great week, and I love you. Bye for now.
Thank you for having Chai with Nanice. Please go to www.nanice.com for great free stuff that will empower you to live your best possible life. Free books, articles, shows, meditation audios, and so much more at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com. Nanice's books are also available in all major bookstores and Amazon. Check out The Infinite Power of You, Even Gandhi Got Hungry and Buddha Got Mad, Zest Point, Lip Prints, and many others by Nanice Ellis. To find out about one-on-one coaching and how Nanice can personally coach you to experience your best life possible, please email mybestlife@nanice.com.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com. Thank you.